Hello, welcome to the PocketGamer.biz podcast, Week in Mobile Games, where we discuss the week's news and provide some insights. I'm Craig Chapple, Head of Content at PocketGamer.biz. With me as ever, Aaron Astle, our news editor. How's it going, Aaron? What have you been up to?
Yeah, good here, thank you. I was at a Jamiroquai concert a few nights ago. That's been the highlight of my week. Very cool gig. They played for a long time as well. It was about 2.5 hours there, which I wasn't expecting. It's basically, they doubled the length of like every song, which really added to the runtime. But yeah, it was quite fun. It worked for that kind of music. There'd just be a little breakdown set and slowly build back up, and then come back in on the chorus or whatever after a few minutes interlude, which I think worked better on some songs than others, to be fair. But it was good and funny that they opened with my favourite Jamiroquai song, which is "Don't Give Hate a Chance." So it was like, this is great, straight in favourite song, good vibes, and then it's like, well, it's kind of peaked for me with the first song. Obviously, it was all good. Obviously, there's bigger songs by them like Virtual Insanity and stuff, which were great. But yeah, it was just funny. I don't think I've been to a gig before where like the first song is my favourite song that they do, and then it's like, I'm satisfied now. Whatever else happened. But no, it was very good. Weirdly, it was on a Tuesday, so I was out of office Tuesday, which I don't know why it was on a Tuesday. That was quite a long evening.
Yes.
I won't say too much in case any of the Pocket Gamer bosses check in on the podcast about what time I got home Wednesday morning. But it was a long evening.
Jamiroquai, it feels like not in your era. That's a band that was in when I grew up.
Yeah, well, into some retro music from before my time.
That's how you're getting old, when people start calling it retro, vintage.
Yeah, I was quite impressed actually. So they've got a new album coming out next year, apparently, and they did like 1 or 2 songs from the upcoming album, which I think often, so obviously no one's going to know it, like that kind of thing is a bit hit or miss usually at gigs, I think, when there's new music. But they were actually like really good songs, so I'm now actually interested in the new album that's going to come out. But yeah, again, given how old they are, how long ago their music was about, I didn't know whether new stuff would be kind of of the same caliber.
They still got it.
It was good. Yeah.
Thanks, Aaron. So, as for myself, I've actually been watching Stranger Things, the new season, and I don't know. I feel it was okay, very okay, I would say. Like, it's fun, but I think last season was so good. I thought the characters, the story was all really well put together. There was like some iconic moments that people would have talked about online. I'll try not to spoil it, but with the music, this season it's going to finish on Boxing Day, I believe. But like, if I was to a year from now, if I was to think about this season so far, I don't know what bit I would think. Like, oh yeah, that bit was so good. I don't think there's really any of those moments. There's a big battle, I guess, that's quite fun. But yeah, I don't know. Have you seen it, Aaron?
Yeah, I was going to say I feel similarly because I didn't watch Series 4 for a long time because I didn't really like Series 3 that much. And then I think it was sort of August, September time I finally got round to Series 4. And like you said, that was great. Really blew my expectations away. I think that's up there with like Series 1. Lots of great moments. That was quite fresh for me, and looking forward to going into Series 5. And then, as you say, I was kind of watching it thinking like, it's fine. There's not really anything wrong with it, but it's not really standing out.
My problem is it feels like it's just waiting for the end.
Yeah, like kind of filler in a way.
And so it's all just sort of running on the spot. Whereas last time it was a lot of big reveals about the whole plot or everything that's been going on. And again, like running up that hill, it's really like super brilliant moment. The villain was fantastic. And this season, I feel like all of that momentum that they had, even the ending, they've just decided, don't worry about it. And I presume there'll be just like 3 episodes of a really mad rush to get it all finished.
Yeah, and I think as well, because I don't know in terms of Series 4 spoilers, like how vague to be. Obviously, that was a few years ago, but kind of the way the way that ended, before seeing any trailers for Series 5 or anything, like I kind of felt like the ending of 4, like Series 5 would have to pick up basically immediately.
Yeah.
Because it looked like the world was ending, basically. And then so it felt a bit like it's diminished the threat somewhat, that it's like, oh, actually, they just kind of carry on as normal.
I think they're basically retreading ground at the moment. Like, I feel like this is probably spoiler. The things that happened in season 4, they're just doing it again. Right. Anyway, for that, so we'll get into things. As always, a quick shout out. Pocket Gamer Connects London is taking place in January 19th to 20th. That's the big one, biggest one of the year. So if you're interested, I think there's still some discounts going. So check those out, and hopefully I'll see you there. If you are there, drop me a message if you'd like to meet. Aaron, I believe you'll be there. Paige will be there. We'll all be there. Can't wait. Okay, so the big news of the week, and it broke just after our podcast, I think, last week. I can't remember if it was that day or on the Friday. I actually think it was the Friday, which is usually a bad news day, depending on what you think of this. Netflix is set to acquire Warner Brothers in an $82.7 billion deal. It marks one of the most significant acquisitions in entertainment history, obviously. It will see Netflix snap up Warner's film and television studios, including HBO and HBO Max, as well as pick up key franchises like The Wizard of Oz, Harry Potter, and DC. The deal will also see the streaming giant pick up Warner Brothers' games division. That includes Rocksteady Studios, which does Batman Arkham series and the kind of the ill-fated Suicide Squad. NetherRealm Studios, Mortal Kombat, TT Games, and a lot of Lego titles. Avalanche Software, they do the Hogwarts Legacy, which I think was 35 million sales, something ridiculous. They're working on the sequel at the moment. And Warner Brothers Games Montreal. I think they've done a couple games, and one of them was a Batman Arkham game. In the announcement from Netflix about this, so it's a done deal with Warner Brothers. There's no mention of the games division or plans or Netflix's plans for that in the original announcement. The transaction was expected to close in the next 12 to 18 months after after the separation of Discovery Global into a new publicly traded company in Q3 2026. It's all subject to regulatory approval. And then, just as you thought, oh wow, this is the biggest deal ever, bear in mind that Netflix was in a bidding war and appeared to win, Paramount, clearly very angry, made a $108 billion all-cash bid for Warner Brothers Discovery to take the whole lot, which is mad. I've been reading that people seem to be expecting further bids to be made in this bidding war. It's worth also noting that there is speculation that I think Jared Kushner is involved in the Paramount deal somehow, because of course Donald Trump's son-in-law, who was also involved in the big acquisition of EA mostly by the Saudi PIF, along with Affinity Partners, I want to say, which is Jared Kushner's group, and Silver Lake, which is an investment. So the speculation that basically Trump's closest friends or closer friends and his son-in-law are involved in the Paramount deal, and that might help push that deal through. So we will see about that. So we reported this week, so we got the kind of the jump on this, I guess, that Netflix co-CEO Gregory Peters, in a conference presentation, said Netflix didn't attribute any value to Warner Brothers Games as part of its $82.7 billion deal. Now, if you bear in mind, Hogwarts Legacy did very well. They also have mobile games. Some of them have done well. Game of Thrones Conquest, I think has done exceptionally well, maybe around the $1 billion mark in its lifetime. So it's kind of surprising, even with the Mortal Kombat franchise, which I don't know how that would work from an IP level if they're still valuing that IP or not. But the games, which that IP runs on, apparently they didn't attribute any value to. So all these people talking about this transmedia flywheel or whatever, like Netflix is not thinking about its games division. And Peter said that while Warner Brothers Games had done great work in the game space, we didn't actually attribute any value to that from the get-go because they're relatively minor compared to the grand scheme of things. Now, we're super excited to bring some of those properties that they've built, which is a great example of that, have been done quite well, and we think that we can incorporate that into what we're offering. They've got great studios and great folks working there, so we think that there's definitely an opportunity there, but just to be clear, we haven't really built that into our deal model. I think anyone that's working in their games division, anyone at Warner Brothers Games, that's very worrying for them. I think I said before last week, I was quite Personally, I was quite worried about the console division because they have ultimately closed a lot of some of their console stuff. They had the studio, I don't remember its name, Blue Studio, Blue something, and they closed that down. I had some experienced developers there. They've redone their strategy last year. I just like in theory, some of these studios could fit, but if they're not going to target console and PC, then they're not going to at all. There's been some mixed, just quickly, there's been some mixed reactions to the deal. So Turbo and CEO John Wright, this was when after the initial Netflix acquisition announcement, said the acquisition offer is a battle to control the next decade of transmedia entertainment. Symbol Zero CEO Raphael Brown said he expected Warner Brothers games to start hemorrhaging a few months after the merger completes. There was an interesting comment from Game Economist Consulting's Philip Black. He said the mythical transmedia future that some believe the deal unlocks already exists through anime. Japan solved the shared IP across TV, film, and games problem decades ago because its audience actually wants it. Meanwhile, the McKinsey consultants are still workshopping pitch decks about how Fallout's $200 million TV budget will drive $50K in marginal game revenue. Or better yet, Riot's CEO is justifying IP narcissism on how Arcade's Emmy was worth the $250 million budget. I've been increasingly convinced that the transmedia thirst trap is driven by Western worship of Hollywood celebrity culture, which is why the decent execution of this is ignored.
As you say, it's bizarre. Like, I could understand it, obviously, if Netflix were like, the game side wasn't the priority in the deal, but to say it wasn't even like a consideration when they have their own like games division already. I know it's different types of games, but still, yeah, it seems quite shocking, really, that they'd just say, like, no, we didn't even think about it. And also then, I guess, so obviously the value of the acquisition isn't, vastly more than like the acquisition of like Activision Blizzard by Microsoft, because that was like 69 million. So like, obviously games are a big business, which we all know. Probably everyone listening to this knows that. But you think all these massive, cultural phenomenon IPs like, Game of Thrones and stuff, Sopranos, that are being bought through the HBO side of it alone. All these massive, big budget shows and films getting bought up isn't ultimately a million miles ahead of the Activision Blizzard deal. And yet, they're not interested in the game side of stuff. I guess my point there is games obviously are massive, and you can, even these massive franchises in the film and TV side are only a bit more than like one big games company in kind of value.
I think what they're valued is just the IP. So, but not the actual game studios. Anyway, the whole thing, like I said, the whole thing just shows that I think for all of Netflix's bluster about the game strategy, and they always talk about it. Oh, it's growing really well, but they never say by how much. And I think this is another sign that whole strategy is a complete and utter mess, and they have no real designs on it practically going forward at the moment, unless they come out with an announcement if they think this is bad PR. But that's not a strategy. Right. So that's the big deal. Aaron, what else have you got?
So another story this week is that Duolingo is doing a crossover with Genshin Impact, which they've said is an unprecedented collaboration. Basically, a few Genshin Impacts appearing in Duolingo, and players can kind of earn rewards for Genshin Impact by playing Duolingo over like consecutive days. So it's, I guess, trying to encourage Genshin Impact players to try out Duolingo. I guess you have to play it consecutively. I think it's 3 days to get like a certain like avatar and name card for Genshin Impact, and then you can get like a recipe and then a redemption code for gems to use in Genshin Impact and by completing like quests in Duolingo. So I think maybe what's most interesting is kind of this, it feels like it ties into Duolingo's kind of gamification. Obviously they bought most of the Next Beat team earlier this year to kind of further gamify Duolingo, and then it seems like another kind of push in that direction to actually try and get gamers playing Duolingo and perhaps get kind of into the gameplay loop so to speak. Obviously, it's a learning app rather than a direct game. I thought it's quite noteworthy that they're doing this collaboration with a massive mobile game. I guess to try and get more people on board.
Yeah, I think it's really cool from Duolingo to be doing this. It just shows how serious that they are about games.
Yeah.
And obviously they did it with the acqui-hire of the next big team and setting that up. I think this is the first probably of many partnerships that they'll do to tap the game audience. And yeah, I think it's pretty smart. And we forget how big still Genshin Impact is. It's absolutely huge still. Right, the next story. So there's a lot of debate, and this happens every year. just so we're clear. There's a lot of debate going on right now about two award shows. The Game Awards, so we're recording this on a Thursday. It takes place basically at midnight for UK people, and the BAFTA Games Awards, and it's the recognition of mobile games. Do they get enough? So at the Game Awards, there is a category for best mobile game. So there is recognition in one specific category. There's also recognition in best esports game, by the way, Mobile Legends Bang Bang. Best mobile game. Let's run through them. Destiny Rising. At the rate it's going, I wouldn't be surprised if it closes. But I guess that you do have to remember these awards. It goes both ways, I guess. They try and reflect the quality of the game. Maybe the game is good but didn't do well, but sure, if it was good, it probably would have done well, right? So, but mobile's a bit of a different beast with monetization. But anyway, it might close, so that would be a bit of a strange winner. Persona 5, The Phantom X, hasn't really gained traction on mobile, but again, maybe it could be in there. Sonic Rumble, quite surprised because it's a big IP, but the developer you covered, Aaron, they admitted, so it's Sega developed, Rovio published effectively, and they admitted they're reworking the game. And this was already after at least a year delay when they were days away from launch. So they've admitted that it's not maybe up to par of where they want it to be, and yet it's nominated for an award for best mobile game. Uma Musume, Pretty Derby. Now, good game, great game. It's old. It's been out for quite a few years, but the worldwide release was this year. So, I mean, we could, fine, I guess, right? If the Western audience, if it's a US audience, right, that I haven't been playing it, then that kind of makes sense. So I'm kind of happy with that. Wuthering Waves, I thought was a bit odd because it released, I thought it released 2 years ago. When's the anniversary?
I'm pretty sure it's May 2024. I'm surprised it's eligible.
Okay, yeah, I mean it is that, and so I get I actually really like this game, so it is a good game to be nominated. Weird that it didn't seem to, I guess, make it last year. I haven't double checked. I presume it's not nominated twice, but it feels weird. It's it was kind of old, but okay, at least it's getting recognition now. But it feels just like a bit of a weird bunch, right? But I kind of get it because it's just what the Game Awards is, isn't it? It's quite bombastic. It is very unashamedly PC and console focused, and these are the big IPs basically that people might be more familiar with, and the types of games people will be more familiar with, which is a lot of these look like your 3D console PC games. That's why they're on that list, is my theory. If we look at BAFTA, I could be wrong. I was looking through it and I was like, sure, Monument Valley 3 is the only mobile game on here, which is now, I think, available on Switch. And that was out of a long list of at least 64 games, something like that. So that's quite shocking, I think, of a long list. And they've got people, mobile people on the panel. So I don't know where that's fallen down in terms of it sounds like they've got the right people on the panel, but I just don't know why they're not nominated. Now, I have some theories. One theory, you have to pay to get on the long list to be nominated for a BAFTA Games Awards. This is, I guess, it's not really a secret. It's like an open secret. It's clearly listed in the nomination form, how you get nominated. So there are fees to enter for any game. £264, that includes VAT, before September 11th or within 30 days of your release to nominate, or if it's later than 30 days of your release, it's £528. There's not massive amounts of money, but I guess if you're an indie, that's quite a lot. Hopefully you got a publisher to work with. And I think, so with BAFTA, and I heard this before, I think there is absolutely an element of the mobile games industry just isn't nominating itself for these things. Maybe it's just they just don't see the value. So we can blame the organisers, which I will a bit, but also I think mobile publishers don't help themselves. They don't engage. And probably because they just don't really want to. They just don't what's the point? The whole marketing, like with the Game Awards, not really BAFTA, but with the Game Awards, the whole market, it's a whole marketing vehicle. The whole night is about new game trailers and announcements. It's not really about the awards. It's kind of weirdly, it's called the Game Awards, but that's the sideshow, right? And that is not how generally mobile publishers engage with their marketing. Obviously, they do these kind of user acquisition campaigns, and then you have our special words, right? KPIs, LTV, ROI, etc. It's just a different way to get eyeballs and players. So I kind of get it. I think it's a real shame that still the most played platform, like, yeah, it makes the most revenue, but like the most played games in the world aren't recognized at two of the most prestigious award shows. I think something has gone wrong there. At least the Game Awards is putting a category together. BAFTA got rid of its category, which I think the last time it had it was a sponsored category. So there's just no room for it. Now, I guess people could say, what would you vote for? Right, who would make it this year? Which I think is almost valid. But we had Aaron, you've been working on this list, right? The new games released in the past year. And the games you've got that I think could be on there. King Shot is a great game. Delta Force, which I'm actually kind of surprised not on the mobile list. But Argero 2, maybe. Color Block Jam. It is not the game that looks like a AAA product, but it is very popular. And as an aside from that, which is not why our games get nominated, but it has been very successful. Disney Solitaire. I know it's a solitaire game, but it's a very well made game. Doing really well, very popular. Uses a massive license. Surprised that wouldn't get mentioned. And then potentially there's a couple others. So I think there are games that could do it. The last thing I'll say is I just wanted to read out the Midway CEO, Christian Lovestadt. They make the Battle of Polytopia, which is a very well-loved mobile game. It's also on Steam, very popular. And it totally goes against all the free-to-play stuff, really. And he's put an open letter titled, "The games industry is biased, it's time to fix that." And effectively, he's saying what we've just kind of gone through is, why do these award shows not reflect culturally, not reflect what all these people are playing? Why do they feel it's not culturally appropriate to do that? He said, gaming currently represents 55% of the global gaming market with 3 billion players, but it's often ignored or even looked down on. Notable awards platforms and industry bodies routinely overlook it when the laurels are handed out. He says, while there are some amazing mobile first titles like Monument Valley, which managed to get the industry's attention, many other extremely popular and successful titles do not. Mobile games like Clash of Clans, Temple Run, Crossy Road, Candy Crush Saga are critically acclaimed and commercially successful, yet are never or rarely acknowledged at Game Awards. I guess on that one bit I'd probably disagree with. Some of those games are just very old. And I know it's all about live ops, but those are Temple Run's a very old IP. Then he goes on to say, why do they get ignored? Because mobile is perceived by too many as a world of predatory monetization and low quality. I previously called this out myself and pushed for change in the mobile sector. However, just because games like that do exist in the mobile market, it should not diminish the achievements of the market's best games. It perhaps makes them more impressive. And if we're honest with ourselves, there are AAA industry darlings crammed with the same monetization mechanics. And then he also goes on to say, awards and media shape the narrative of what counts as culturally or creatively valuable. When mobile is excluded, we send a message to developers, investors, and publishers that mobile is not a place for ambition or artistry. That narrative influences hiring, funding, and who gets a spotlight on stage. He goes to say, if we celebrate innovation, we should celebrate it. I agree with the sentiment, but I disagree with some of the points made, because again, does it really affect investment? Does it really affect publisher deals? The popularity of these games. Again, it's just the way that mobile games reach. I don't think it does. And I'm not saying that any of this makes mobile games a failure, because it doesn't. Do you need this stuff? Not really. But ultimately, I think the teams behind these games deserve the recognition like everybody else does. And yeah, you could be sitting there thinking, oh yeah, it's lovely to have nice things. You don't need to, but it is nice to have nice things and for teams to get recognized along with others. I guess that's the only reason that I think it should be celebrated. And the industry is just very strange. You shouldn't then you should just call it the AAA Awards or something. Not the game. If it's called the Game Awards or the BAFTA Games Awards, it's inclusive of everything. Otherwise, just be clear of your intent and don't. And I kind of get sick and tired of, especially from BAFTA in the past, of we don't ignore mobile. It's just well, you kind of do. And again, the other side, but the other side of the coin is, I think if anyone in the mobile games industry wants this kind of recognition, which it may be that it just doesn't, then you do have to shout about it and you do have to nominate. Because if you don't do that, then we just end up in this once again. We'll end up with the same conversation next year.
I think the main thing I wanted to add in is that, I think the fact that particularly like Persona and Sonic for me being, not to throw any shade at these specific games, but them being among like the potential best mobile game of the year does very much feel like, oh, these are game IPs that we know from consoles. So the mobile games, that they can go in the potential best mobile games, rather than, really looking into, as you said, stuff like Colour Block Jam that maybe people on the console PC side might not be as familiar with, but if they actually played them, they might actually think, these are really great mobile games. They'd rather just go with stuff that they're already vaguely familiar with what it's all about. Obviously, you have stuff like Uma Musume in there, which I think, as you said, obviously it's been around for a long time in Japan, but I think that's a kind of a good entry for this year in particular. That feels fair for that to be in there. But overall, the list kind of felt, again, like Wuthering Waves. I'm not really sure how it works, whether, like, do they normally have games in there that are more than a year old?
It could. I don't know what the reason would be. Maybe there is one. I just don't know what it is. I am glad it is getting some recognition. So, like, for that one, it feels like it falls out of the eligibility period.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if it didn't get it last year, I'm kind of glad it's in this year because it is very good. So, like that, I'm not overly frustrated about.
Yeah, I'm more just confused at what the rules are, but I agree.
Yeah.
Like, I'm happy for it to be there.
Well, I think this is really essentially what it is for all of them. We're just confused what the rules are for mobile, and is it the same rules that apply to other categories? I'm just not really sure. But remember, to go back to the story from last year, that Squad Busters, they got a trailer at the Game Awards, and apparently it was just very difficult to convince Jeff Kiley to promote a mobile game, even with a trailer.
Yeah.
Even when they're giving him money, saying, please, can we have this trailer? And so that does tell you what the show's all about. So that is really why those games reflect the show. They don't reflect the industry. So yeah, that's one of the big debates going on. But I do always look forward to the Game Awards, to be honest. It's quite an interesting show. Again, just because of all the game announcements and trailers. Right, we seem to have had a bit of a technical problem. So Aaron has left the show, mostly probably because he was bored of me talking, I'm sure. But he is no longer here. So I'm going to very quickly run through a couple other bits. So I did a video interview. We're going to be doing more of those as we go into the new year and beyond. Don't worry, Peggy is still around for anyone that watches our interview videos, but I'm going to be doing more. And I did one with Toronto Studios Chief Gaming Officer Michael Rubinelli, who has been working in the industry for decades. He's been at EA, he's been at Disney, Mattel, played him when he was just before he was at Disney, and so he's been through all of the industry cycles, the new trends, whether that's go from 2D to 3D, browser, mobile, free to play, browser, social, Web3, which he's been doing with Toronto, which is renamed from WAC Studios, which does Web3. So we had a really interesting chat about the first mover advantage or second mover advantage, how studios actually adapt, and whether you should even try to take on some of these trends, because as we all know, especially with Web3, it hasn't worked out so far, just by all of the investment that's been put in it. So whether you should even look at it. And I think for big companies, you should look at it. But the interesting thing he was saying, and I think things probably all know, but it's nice to hear it, is just small companies it's a bit easier, or new companies it's easier. And you can build for these new trends. So specifically like mobile free-to-play, you just built for it. And the example that he used, which is interesting, is Supercell, obviously. And they obviously caught the mobile free-to-play wave in the West very early. And they did try to do browser with Gunshine. That failed. So famously, they pivoted to Heyday, which is really a copy inspired by Farmville. Clash of Clans, inspired by Backyard Monsters from Kixeye. And Kixeye had been doing free-to-play, but they were stuck in browser. Supercell saw the opportunity and they went for it. And Kixeye was just kind of too slow at the time to really adapt. And so Supercell kind of took that off. And then we just kind of go through the years of that, and hopefully the aim was to get a lot of really good insights and useful advice, practical advice for anyone out there that's working at a studio, running a studio, thinking of founding a new one, and just some of the things you can think about, and how to know if it's possible, whether a buzzword actually means anything, or it's just a load of hot air cooked up by Silicon Valley. And then the last story I very quickly wanted to look at was there's a studio called Starberry Games, a developer of Merge Mayor. And the CEO and co-founder, Antti Hatara, has been explaining how the studio has changed its approach to production and new games ideation, and they're going all in on AI. So he said, our approach is deliberately scrappy, build quick prototypes in 1 to 2 weeks, test them with real users, learn fast and move on. We've already seen validation of this approach. Our game designer, Sven Schmidt, took #1 place in the recent AI hackathon by Supercell with his project Data Gotchi, a twist on virtual pets powered by AI. They've also launched their first prototype from this track, Kingmaker, a game that experiments with AI-driven gameplay in ways traditional design couldn't have. So it's interesting. He does admit, AI tools are powerful, but they're not perfect. They require new workflows, skills, and new ways of thinking about production. Meanwhile, the other kind of track, I guess, is the AI games. Like how can games be different? It says they face even steeper challenges. They're completely new to players, and there is no defined genre or corresponding player expectations. He said the opportunity is too significant to ignore. Now, there's been a lot of debate recently in the industry about whether even AI in games, and how I think for certain, especially premium AAA games, there's been a consumer backlash against this. But naturally, there's also been really studios, even if they're not public about it, most are using it somewhere in their production pipeline. And there's some new studios popping up that are all in on AI. Some are shifting like this. Some are keeping very quiet about it. There's probably a very, very small minority that aren't using it at all. Again, it comes out in different ways. I think one of the biggest issues among consumers is using it for voice acting, for assets and premium games, things like that. Really interesting that they're going to do this. I'm curious, as always, where we are, like in a year, 2 years' time. What does it all look like? Is the backlash too much? Or everyone's just going to do it because that's the way the wind's blowing? Right, so Aaron, I'm really sorry. You came back. I waited. Everyone, Aaron is back just for the end of the podcast.
Yes,
sorry, Aaron.
hello everyone.
Some computer troubles today. Anyway, I'm really sorry, Aaron, but we're going to stop there.
It's all right. Glad I made it back.
I thought you weren't coming back, to be honest. I thought your laptop is finished now. We'll wait for you. We'll wait for us to send you the new one. I was like, he's not come on Teams. I think his laptop might actually be destroyed. Right. So as I say, that brings us to the end of a slightly chaotic week in mobile games, and really a slightly chaotic week.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't mention I got locked out of my Google account and then couldn't see the meeting that I had yesterday, etc. Chaos, absolute chaos this week. But thanks everybody. We hope you enjoyed we hope you still enjoyed the show. And have a great end of your week. Have a great weekend.
For the Christmas episode next week.
Yeah, we're all going to be with our Christmas jumpers again. And very hopeful that our deputy editor, Paige Cook, will be making a comeback to the show. Very excited. And yeah, we'll do our end of year wrap up. Right. Have a good weekend. See you later.
Bye.
Goodbye.